Hi, my name is Laura, and my father disowned me the night before my wedding, all because I fell in love with the son of his biggest rival. He raised a glass, gave a toast, and announced that my brother would inherit everything. Me, I just sat there and nodded. 7 years later, the family business was falling apart, and the only person who could save it was me. So grab your coffee. You'll want to hear this one. The smell of fresh flowers mixed with iron from the decorated chairs still lingers in my memory. Since I was a little girl, I had dreamed about my wedding day. Scrapbooks filled with clippings, playlists for the ceremony, even a childhood sketch of my dream dress. But more than the aisle or the vows, I dreamed of my father's eyes. I imagined him tearing up as he walked me down the aisle, giving me away with that subtle smile he only wore when something truly moved him. But not all dreams survive reality. And my father had a real problem with happy endings he didn't control. He owned the oldest pharmacy in town. Strict, meticulous, the kind of man who arranged pill bottles alphabetically even when no one noticed. He'd always say, "Tradition isn't negotiable." I grew up hearing about inventory, invoices, and trust, and he made it clear he expected me to follow in his footsteps. But I didn't want to just repeat what he built. I wanted to build something of my own. Then I fell in love with Evan, the son of his biggest competitor, and that, to my father, was a betrayal he couldn't forgive. Evan was everything my father wasn't. Kind, soft-spoken, the kind of man who listens first and speaks later. He worked with his own dad in a newer, warmer pharmacy across town. When we started dating, my father didn't say much, but the silence was loud. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped hugging me. And at a family dinner one night, he said it, "You're teaming up with the people holding us back." I laughed, thinking it was a poorly timed joke. But it wasn't. That was the warning shot. From then on, Evan became that guy from the other pharmacy. Never called by name. Never treated with respect. I tried everything to soften things before the wedding. I invited my parents to help with the planning. I sent them photos of the decorations. I even asked my dad to pick a special song for our entrance. He ignored it all. Then, 2 days before the wedding, my brother Adam called. "Dad wants to host a welcome dinner tomorrow night." I was surprised, but part of me wanted to believe this was a peace offering. Maybe my father had finally realized I was still his daughter, even if he didn't approve of my choice. The dinner was held in the backyard of the house I grew up in. String lights hanging from the trees, soft music, candles glowing on the tables. My mother smiled, but it was the kind of smile that apologizes without words. My father stood up for a toast, spoke about family legacy pride. I glanced at Evan, trying to read his calm expression. And then he said it. "I'd like to announce that from this day forward, Adam will be the sole heir to our legacy." A chill ran down my spine. "Laura has her own path now," he continued. "She already has what she needs." My throat went dry. I couldn't swallow. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just gripped the napkin in my lap, like it could keep me anchored to reality. Under the table, Evan gently squeezed my hand. My father sat down. The dinner continued as if he hadn't just cut me out of the family on the eve of my wedding. My mother avoided my eyes. Adam, visibly uncomfortable, tried to change the subject. And me? I sat there, pretending to eat, trying to digest the truth. He hadn't just disinherited me. He made it part of the toast. When I finally stood up, I went straight to the car. Evan followed in silence. We sat in the dark, engine off, radio silent. "Did you know?" I asked, staring out the window. He hesitated. "I had a feeling," he said, "but I didn't think he'd actually go through with it." I took a deep breath, holding back something sharp in my chest. He didn't cut me out for marrying Evan. He did it because I didn't obey. Evan touched my cheek and asked, "Do you still want to go through with the wedding tomorrow?" Tears filled my eyes. Yes, but not for them. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom. The pink flowered wallpaper was still there. The closet still held a few old clothes. The lamp clicked on like always, but none of it felt like mine anymore. I was no longer part of the family script, not in the line of succession, not in the story my father was writing. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, as if the answers were up there. Tomorrow I would walk down the aisle, and I already knew it wouldn't be the happiest day of my life, but it would be the day I chose to keep going. Without blessing, without a name, just with courage. The sunlight poured through the window of the room where I was getting ready. It lit up the veil, draped over the chair. The girls around me were chatting, laughing, putting on lipstick, but everything sounded like it was underwater. Everything looked just like I had dreamed. The dress, the bouquet, the music in the background. But inside, it felt like my heart had stayed back at the dinner table the night before. When the car pulled up to the church, my father was already there, waiting to walk me down the aisle. He offered me his arm, without ever looking me in the eye. As we walked in silence toward the altar, I didn't feel like a bride. I felt like a farewell wrapped in white. The ceremony was beautiful, or so I was told. I barely remember the details. I remember Evan's hands trembling as he held mine. I remember my own voice cracking during the vows. I remember looking at my mother and seeing her lower her gaze. When the pastor asked if anyone objected to the marriage, a voice in my head whispered, "They already did, last night," loud and clear. My father stayed on his feet the whole time, arms crossed, expression frozen. When the guests applauded after the kiss, he was the only one who didn't clap, didn't smile, not even a little. At the reception, we smiled for the cameras. We raised glasses. We danced the first dance. But everything tasted like absence. The flashes caught smiles, but not the silence between them. Guests came up with the usual phrases. "You two look amazing. Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. This is the best part of life." I smiled back, mechanically, like I was watching someone else's wedding. Then I overheard one of my uncles say, a little too loudly, "Adam's really the pride of the family now. Business is in the right hands." Adam just smiled awkwardly, and I felt like they were framing my absence on the wall. I stepped away, went to the bathroom, locked the door. I leaned on the sink and stared into the mirror. What I saw was a distorted version of myself. Red eyes, mascara running, lipstick smudged. I was the bride. I was the daughter who no longer belonged. I was the woman in love, and somehow still hurting. I wiped my face with tissue, took a deep breath, adjusted my dress. When I stepped back into the room, Evan was waiting for me with open hands. No questions, just presence. We danced, and under the lights of that reception hall, I danced with the man I loved, while quietly saying goodbye to the family that raised me. The honeymoon was the opposite of the wedding. Simple, light, nobody expecting anything from us. We walked on the beach, sipped coffee in silence, collected new memories. But one night during dinner, Evan held my hand a little tighter than usual. "There's something I need to tell you," he said. I slowly put down my fork. He looked me in the eyes. I tried talking to your father before the wedding. I asked him to respect you. If he couldn't accept me, I at least asked him not to hurt you. He ignored me, humiliated me. He paused. I couldn't protect you from that. I didn't say anything. There was no anger between us, just the quiet understanding that at some point we'd both been left to stand alone. He never saw you as worthy, Evan added. I shook my head. They chose the son who obeys and rejected the daughter who thinks. Evan pulled me into a hug, and right there, with the sound of waves crashing in the distance and the taste of cheap wine on my lips, we made a new promise, one beyond marriage. We would build a family on our terms, a place where love wasn't conditional on obedience. When we got back from the trip, Evan got a message from his father. He wanted to talk. I assumed it was about business, but when Evan returned from that meeting, his shoulders were heavy. "I've been cut off," he said. "My father thinks marrying you is betrayal. He said you don't mix bloodlines with the enemy." I stared at him, speechless, and then, for the first time in days, I smiled. Not out of joy, out of clarity. "So now it's both of us," I said. And in that moment, we stopped being children trying to prove ourselves. We became our own family. Everything changed after that. No more invisible ropes tying us to people who wanted to control us. No more waiting to be accepted by those who only valued obedience. We were alone, but finally free. Free from last names, from legacy, from expectations. The future was uncertain, but it was ours. And even though our hands were empty, we carried something no one could take from us. The courage to begin again. The car was packed to the ceiling. Suitcases, boxes, and 2 houseplants we refused to leave behind. We left early. No goodbyes. No last looks. The road felt longer than it really was. Maybe because we were carrying the weight of starting over. The city we were heading to was bigger, but not so big that we'd get lost in it. And that was exactly what we wanted. No one knew us there. No family names. No inherited legacies. No pharmacies called Martins or Wallace chasing us like shadows. Just us. And a quiet agreement. Start from scratch. Ask permission from no one. We both had pharmacy degrees, but not enough real experience to open our own place yet. So we humbled ourselves. Took shifts at neighborhood drugstores. Scratchy uniforms. Barely enough to cover rent and groceries. Evan worked nights. I worked afternoons. We saw each other during breakfast and in hurried texts across the day. It wasn't romantic. It was survival. There were nights I cried doing the dishes, wishing I could just get a hug from my mom, even knowing she wouldn't give one. But little by little, we found our rhythm. Evan charmed every customer with his patience. I organized stockrooms, suggested improvements, and created simple systems that impressed the managers. We started saving slowly. And on nights when sleep didn't come, we'd pull out a notebook in the kitchen and scribble ideas on what we wanted to build. We didn't just want a pharmacy. We wanted a place that felt like care, where people had names, not numbers, where health wasn't just a product, it was presence. The name came to us during one of those long nights. Pharmaviva, a blend of healing and life. It captured exactly what we were trying to do. Live, even after everything. We got a small loan and rented a modest space. The shelves were secondhand. The counter was built by a friend. We didn't have employees, just hands, hope, and each other. We opened at 7, closed at 10. Evan handled the customers. I did the inventory, finances, and paperwork. Every customer who came back felt like proof that something inside us was starting to come back too. The first year was a blur of exhaustion. No days off, no weekends, no breaks. But what we gained was rare. Belonging. The neighborhood adopted us. Kids waved at us from the sidewalk. Older women brought us coffee in little thermoses. Doctors started recommending our store, saying, "Those two really care." We created a small reading corner, then a space to check blood pressure. Later, scheduled health screenings. Everything was simple, but everything had heart, and the community responded, as if they'd been waiting for us all along. Then came the surprise. An investor reached out in our second year. He said he'd been following the buzz about Pharmaviva, that he saw potential, a model worth scaling. Expansion. The word both scared and excited us. We spent nights debating it, listing pros and cons, running numbers with nervous energy. But deep down we knew we had built something special, not just for us, but for others. So we said yes, took a leap, and opened our second location in a nearby city. We trained the entire team ourselves. Every smile, every shelf, every greeting had to carry the same soul. Then we dove into the world of franchising, online courses, late-night reading, manuals we wrote by hand at the kitchen table. Soon came the third location, then the fourth. And with each new store, the feeling grew. We weren't just running a business. We were building a legacy that belonged to no one but us. Customers wrote to us, saying they felt at home. Former employees became store managers, and each new opening whispered the same quiet truth. This wasn't about proving anything to our parents. It was about honoring the part of us that never stopped dreaming, even when our hands were empty. Of course, there were hard days, logistics, deadlines, tight budgets. but none of it outweighed the pride we felt. Watching something rise out of nothing. Some nights, Evan and I would get home too tired to speak, but we'd lock eyes, and that look said everything. We did it. We didn't inherit anything. We didn't ask for anything. No one chose us, but we chose each other. And in the end, that choice was stronger than any family name on a building. Morning light poured into our main office. Boxes were stacked by the wall. Fresh coffee filled the air, and the room buzzed with quiet planning. It was a regular Friday, until someone suggested opening a new location. In a mid-sized city with strong potential. I pulled up the map on my tablet, scanned the options, and then my finger paused. Instinctively, I said it out loud. The name of my hometown. The silence that followed lasted a beat too long. Evan looked at me carefully. You sure? I nodded. It's not about them. It's about me. I want to exist where they tried to erase me. He didn't push. He knew that tone. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. We started searching for a location. And as if fate had a flair for the dramatic, the best spot available was on the same street as my father's pharmacy. A corner unit. Big windows. Good foot traffic. We signed the lease without celebration. No champagne. Just quiet clarity. Another step forward, but with the unmistakable feeling of going back. Renovations began quietly, but in a small town, nothing stays quiet for long. Within days, the rumors started. Isn't that the daughter of Mr. Martin's? She's opening right in front of his store? She's here to take him down. I wasn't, but I also wasn't leaving. I didn't hide my name, didn't water down the branding, didn't act like I owed anyone an explanation. The colors of Pharmaviva filled the storefront. The team trained directly with me. Every shelf was placed with intention. This wasn't just another location. This was a silent declaration. I didn't leave because I failed. I left so I could bloom. 1 week before the grand opening, Adam showed up. He came alone, beard unshaved, face tense. He said it was unfair, that we were invading family territory. I took a breath. I didn't take anything from anyone. I'm standing in a space that's mine by right. He pushed back, suggested another part of town, another city. This will crush Dad's business, he warned. Evan, silent until then, finally spoke. You had the freedom to choose your path. Now we're choosing ours. Adam didn't reply. He just walked away. Opening day arrived with sunshine and a line of people at the door. We handed out health kits, did free screenings, gave away simple gifts. People walked in with curiosity and walked out smiling. Some recognized me, some didn't, but what they said mattered most. This is exactly what we needed. Within weeks, our store became a reference. Word spread fast. Pharmaviva earned what a last name never could. Trust. And then the report started. The family pharmacy? Struggling. Employees quitting. Customers switching over. Rumors of messy shelves, poor service, and high prices. I listened. I didn't comment. Not because it didn't sting, but because it wasn't my job to fix. What they chose to ignore. The difference between control and care had always been clear, and people could see that. A friend told me they saw my father drive by our new location. Slow. He didn't stop, didn't come in, didn't even glance toward the window. Maybe he still thought my success was a personal attack. But he never understood. I didn't come back to fight. I came back because I could, because I had earned it, because no one else would write where I was allowed to belong. As Evan and I moved ahead with franchising, we created training material, built leadership teams, and shaped our growth plan with heart. We were ready to expand without losing the soul of what we'd built. But right before we launched the next phase, a message came in. From Adam, we need to talk. The tone was different. So was the posture. And deep down, I already knew. When the ground starts to collapse beneath you, you reach out to whoever built on solid rock. The whispers started like a bad cold going around town. Customers complained about Martin's pharmacy. Long lines, empty shelves, impatient staff. Some came into our store venting. Others were just tired. On social media, the comments multiplied. They used to stand for tradition. Now, they can't even fill a prescription. I wasn't looking for it, but the news always found me, and I took it as a reminder. When care leaves a business, the business doesn't take long to follow. I had just stepped out of a meeting with our new franchise partners when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Adam. "Can we talk?" No explanation, no greeting, just that. I replied with a time and place. He showed up at our Pharmaviva headquarters, in wrinkled clothes and tired eyes. His steps were slow, his silence louder than any apology. We sat across from each other in the conference room, two people who once shared childhood, now sharing nothing but a heavy breath of overdue reality. He got right to the point. "The pharmacy won't make it another 6 months," he said. "We've lost almost everything. Clients, staff, suppliers, and honestly direction." I didn't say a word, just listened. "My parents are still pretending it's just a phase," he continued. "But they're lost. And me, I'm not you, Laura." His eyes dropped. "You won, and I didn't." The words hit the room like a confession, not bitter, just real. And then came the ask, "Would you consider buying the pharmacy? Saving the name? What's left of the family's legacy?" I felt my shoulders tense. My hand tightened just slightly on the edge of the table, not out of anger, but because the little girl in me wanted to scream no. But the woman I'd become took a slow breath. "You're offering me what was taken from me, and now you expect me to buy it." He nodded silently. "It's not just the building," he whispered. "It's what it represents." I folded my hands in front of me and replied calmly, "Then let's talk, as business people, not as siblings." In the days that followed, our legal team took over. We made a fair offer, lower than market value, because we knew they had no leverage. There was no counter, no pushback, no call to negotiate. Adam accepted. My father never appeared. When everything was finalized, Adam came alone to sign the papers, just like the first time. He sat, signed in silence, pushed the envelope across the table. "Good luck," he said. And I simply replied, "Thank you." Not out of politeness, but because sometimes how you hold your voice matters more than what you say. I went home with the contract in my hand, closed the office door, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the floor. The envelope sat there in front of me, just paper and ink on the outside, but carrying years of invisible weight. This was it, the full circle moment. The pharmacy where I learned the names of medicine, before I knew what they were for, was mine now, not through inheritance, not through approval, but because I walked the hard road and never gave up. We took our time renovating the store, kept the exterior mostly the same, but inside, everything was upgraded, everything except for one shelf. A dark wooden shelf with a tiny crack on the side, the same one where I used to rest my chin as a kid. "That one stays," I told the team, not for nostalgia, but out of respect. The past didn't need to be erased. It just needed to be redefined. At the reopening, an older woman hugged me and said, "It's good to see this pharmacy alive again." And I thought to myself, she had no idea just how true that was. Later that day, Evan pulled me aside, looked into my eyes and said, "You did all this without yelling, without stepping on anyone, without revenge. You just walked forward." I leaned my head on his shoulder and whispered back, "Justice isn't noise. It's balance." And in that moment, I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. The thing that once broke me was now what carried me forward. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I never stopped choosing to be whole. The headline wasn't dramatic, wasn't poetic. It simply read, "Pharmaviva takes over historic pharmacy location in town." A few local papers ran short articles. Some tried to make it sentimental. Others hinted at revenge. I said nothing. No interviews. No social media posts. No statements. I didn't need to speak, because some victories don't ask for attention. They just show up and stay. True justice doesn't shout. It simply settles where it belongs. During renovations of the old pharmacy, I chose to keep one original shelf. It was made of dark wood, with a small crack on the side, right where I used to rest my chin as a child, stretching to reach the pretend medicine boxes I'd line up like a game. That shelf wasn't just furniture. It was memory, not of the place, but of who I used to be. The team questioned my decision, but I stood firm. It stays. Not everything that hurts needs to be removed. Some things we transform. My father never showed up. Not during construction. Not on reopening day. Not after. But a few weeks later, I got a message from my mother. Short. Direct. You taught us something. I stared at the screen for a long moment, and finally replied, I learned from what you did to me. Then I put my phone down. No anger. No ache. Just a strange peace. That comes when you realize forgiveness doesn't need an audience. Sometimes it just needs to be lived. Quietly. Today, Evan and I lead a pharmacy network that stretches across the country. The franchise model worked. But it's not the numbers that make us proud. It's the heart we kept at the center of it all. We still offer human-centered care. We fund community programs. We provide scholarships. We train and support women who've been rejected by their own families, just like I was. None of that was in the original business plan, but all of it came from the one thing they tried to take from us, a sense of belonging. One day, I was invited to speak at a national conference for young entrepreneurs, a full auditorium, soft lighting, microphones humming. I took a deep breath and walked onto the stage, told my story from the beginning, the rejection, the silence, the decision to rebuild. Then I paused, looked at the crowd, and said, sometimes being cut out of your family's story is exactly what pushes you to write your own. Silence, then applause. It wasn't just clapping. It was recognition. It was belonging. From strangers who had no idea what it meant to be erased, but understood what it means to rise. After the talk, a reporter asked, what's the secret to your success? I smiled, glanced at my hands, then at Evan waiting off stage, and said, the inheritance I received didn't come from blood. It came from courage. She thanked me. I thanked her. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I realized my story wasn't a wound anymore. It was a seed, planted in dry, cracked soil, and still it chose to bloom. Not because anyone gave me permission, but because I decided it was time. Back at our headquarters, I sat alone in the room that used to be a storage closet. On the desk was a photo frame from our very first Pharmaviva location. Me, Evan, and a handmade wooden counter, built by a friend who believed in us. We were smiling in that picture, exhausted, hopeful, completely unaware of everything that was still ahead. I looked at it and smiled again, because now I know I didn't need anyone's blessing. I didn't inherit wealth, or a name, or approval, but I inherited myself, and that was more than enough.